Hey friends, join with me tonight is my good friend GeminiReads, one of the most underrated horror narrators on this platform right now. We both hope you enjoy the stories, and as a personal thank you to my fans who've been with the channel for all these years, even after taking such a long break and becoming a ghost, you're all still here. And as a second note, if you'd like one of your own stories featured on the channel, I'll have a link to my Discord server down below. A link to GeminiReads Channel will also be available. You should show him some love. He just hit 2,000 subscribers. Let's make it 20,000 by the end of the year. Alright, I hope you guys enjoy the video. It was the kind of cold that bit right through you. The kind only Nebraska winters can deliver. I was maybe 8 or 9, small for my age, and bundled up like a little marshmallow every time I stepped outside. Our town was tiny, the kind where everyone knew everyone, or at least you thought they did. That made whatever happened even scarier. It started small, a little prick on the back of your neck. I walked to school usually with my older brother, but sometimes I had to go alone, if he had early practice. One morning, I noticed a beat-up dark blue truck. It wasn't common sight in our town, and it just lingered. It'd be parked down the street from my house when I left, then a few blocks ahead, and then again as I got close to school. It was always there, just watching. First I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone was just visiting, or maybe a delivery truck. But it just kept happening, every day. The same blue truck. The windows were tinted dark, but I could never see who was inside. It made my stomach knot up. I told my mom. She was a practical woman. So she just said, "Maybe it's a new mail carrier, honey. Or maybe someone's working on a house." She watched me walk to the corner the next day, but the truck wasn't there right then. It showed up later when I was about halfway to school, a block behind me. The snow came down heavier that year, big fat flakes that made everything really quiet. That's when it got worse. The truck wasn't just following me anymore. Sometimes when I got to walking home, I'd take a shortcut through the park, past the frozen pond. One afternoon, I was almost out of the park when I heard footsteps behind me, crunching in the fresh snow. I turned, and there he was. A man, tall, bundled in a dark coat, with a knitted hat pulled low. He was maybe 20 feet behind me, just walking. Not hurrying, but always keeping the same distance. My heart started to pound like a drum. I sped up, trying to look like I was just walking faster because it was cold. He sped up too. I started to run, not a full sprint, just a quick dash. I heard his footsteps getting faster behind me. I didn't dare look back again. I ran all the way home, my lungs burning, the cold air stinging my throat. I burst through the door breathless and crying. My mom was instantly worried. I blurted out everything about the truck, about the man to the park. My dad, who was usually pretty calm, got a hard look on his face, and he called the police. The police were nice, but there wasn't much they could do. They said they'd keep an eye out for the dark blue truck. They told my parents to make sure I wasn't walking alone. From then on, my dad and my brother walked me to and from school every single day. But the truck was still there sometimes. Just a glimpse of it turning a corner or parked further down the street. It was like a ghost always lurking. It made the world feel smaller and scarier. I started to look over my shoulder constantly, and I'd jump at my shadow. Sleep became a struggle, filled with nightmares of the dark blue truck and the man's silent steps behind me. One day, maybe a month after the park incident, my dad was driving me to school. We passed the old general store on the edge of town, and there it was. The dark blue truck. It was parked crookedly, like it had just pulled in. And next to it getting out was the man. He was thinner than I remembered, with a patchy beard and eyes that seemed to dart around. He looked ordinary. Too ordinary for the fear that he put in my heart. He glanced over, and for a second his eyes met mine through the car window. It was just a second, but it felt like forever. A shiver went down my spine. My dad saw him too. He didn't say anything, just tightened his grip on the steering wheel. He drove me to school and then turned around and went back. I don't know what he said to the man, or if he even said anything at all. My dad wasn't the kind to pick a fight, but he always had a way of making his presence known. After that day, the truck was gone completely. I never saw it again. The man never appeared. It was like he vanished as quickly as he had appeared. The fear didn't vanish that fast, though. It took a long time for me to feel safe walking alone again, for the shadows to stop looking like a threat. Even now, years later, a dark blue truck can still send a little shiver down my spine. It's a cold, silent terror that etched itself into my childhood. So, to the man in the dark blue truck, at that chilling Nebraska winter, let's never meet again. The heat in Texas during the summer is no joke. It's the kind of heat that presses down on you, makes the air shimmer. It never really lets up, even at night. We were at Camp Lone Star, a pretty typical summer camp for kids around middle school age. There are about 20 of us, split into 2 cabins, and a handful of counselors who were barely older than us. What started as a fun, bug-filled adventure quickly turned into something much scarier. It began subtly, like most creepy things do. The camp was a bit rustic, set back in some woods not too far from a small town. We'd heard whispers about a homeless camp further out in the woods, but it was always just that, whispers. Something the counselors used to make us stay on the marked trails. The first odd thing happened during a nature hike. We were supposed to be identifying local plants, but most of us were just swatting mosquitoes. One of the kids, Mike, who was always a bit of a jokester, suddenly stopped. "Hey, did anyone else see that?" he whispered. We hadn't. He swore he saw someone moving through the trees, off the trail, keeping pace with us. And then the counselors just kind of laughed it off. Said it was probably a deer, and we didn't think too much of it. A few days later, things got weirder. Our cabin, the Rattlers, had a steady stash of candy we stuck in. One morning, it was gone. Not just taken, but the wrappers were neatly folded on Mike's pillow. We blamed the other cabin, the Armadillos. Of course, a prank war broke out. All harmless stuff, but the candy incident stuck with me. Who would fold a wrapper like that? Then came the rustling at night. Our cabin had a screened window that faced the woods. Most nights it was just crickets and frogs, but some nights we'd hear soft sounds, like someone moving branches or footsteps on dried leaves, really close to the window. We'd whisper about it, trying to scare each other, but deep down it was genuinely unsettling. One night I swore I saw a shadow move past the window, too tall and too slow to be an animal. Our counselor, Sarah, was cool, but she was also pretty easily distracted. We told her about the noise, and she said it was just probably raccoons. "Just remember to keep your food put away," she'd remind us, not really getting how close the sound felt. The real scare happened during the overnight campout. That was the highlight of the session. We pitched tents in the clearing deeper in the woods, made a big bonfire, and told ghost stories. It was supposed to be fun, but that night the air felt heavy. I was sharing a tent with my best friend Chloe and 2 other girls. We were just drifting off when Chloe nudged me. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I had. It was a soft humming sound, almost like someone singing to themselves, but off-key and gravelly. And it was close. Too close. Definitely not one of the counselors. Then we heard something else. A dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the ground, just outside of our tent. We froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone in the tent could hear it. We lay there, not dare moving, listening to the strange hum and drag. It went on what felt like forever, clinging to our tent. Then a voice, a low raspy, just spoke outside of the thin nylon wall. "You got any change?" It wasn't a question, it was a demand. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't one of the counselors. We stayed perfectly still, not making a sound. The humming started again, and the dragging, slowly moving away from our tent, and then towards another. The next morning, the whole campout was a mess. Some of the boys' tents had been slashed open, food was missing, and scattered. Around one of the tents were a bunch of odd little carvings made from sticks and rocks, arranged in strange patterns. The counselors were clearly freaked out. The camp director, a stern man named Mr. Peterson, arrived shortly after dawn. He tried to calm us down, but his face was white. He called the local sheriff, and when the sheriff arrived, he looked around grimly. "Looks like old Mr. Sillis," he mumbled to Mr. Peterson, loud enough for us to hear. "He's been around these parts for years. Harmless, mostly, but he gets restless." Harmless? He had slashed tents and demanded change in the middle of the night. We felt anything but safe. The sheriff and his deputies went into the woods, and after a while they brought him back. He was a man with a long, unkempt beard, wide eyes, and clothes that were just rags. He carried a worn-out backpack and shuffled his feet. He looked tired and maybe a little confused, but there was also something unsettling beyond his gaze as he looked at all of us. He was the man I'd seen in the shadow out of our cabin window. He was the one Mike had seen in the woods. They took him away quietly, and Mr. Peterson cut the camp out short. We were all moved back into the cabins for the rest of the session. No one went to the woods without an escort, and the windows of the cabin stayed closed and latched, no matter how hot it got. That summer the heat felt different. It wasn't just the Texas sun. It was the chill of knowing someone had been watching us, moving through the shadows, always just out of sight, until they weren't. The innocence of camp was broken by the silent, unsettling presence of a man we didn't know, who saw us not as kids, but maybe just as resources, or shadows in his own troubled world. So, to Mr. Sillis, the man who hummed in the dark and asked for change through a tent wall in the Texas woods, let's not meet again. Not ever.
The winter of '94 was brutal, even for the Rockies. Snow piled in drifts that dwarfed the old pines, and the air was so sharp it felt like it could shatter. We were 17, invincible, or so we thought. There were 6 of us: me, my best friend Mark, his girlfriend Jen, and 3 others: Kyle, Sarah, and Dave. We'd convinced our parents to let us go on a weekend ski trip to a cabin near Rocky Mountain National Park. The truth was, we were more interested in exploring the backcountry fueled by a mix of teenage bravado and cheap beer. The first day was a blur of laughter and snowball fights. The second day, a dare. We'd found an old faded trail map in the cabin and decided to hike, a less traveled loop, promising to be back before nightfall. The sun was bright and the snow was pristine. We wore jeans and sneakers, a testament to our profound ignorance. The trail started out wide, a comfortable path for our group, but about an hour in, the snow deepened and the trail markers became more and more sporadic. We didn't worry. We were all together. We were a group. The conversation flowed, a mix of high school gossip and dreams of the future. Then, the snow started to fall again. Not in a gentle flurry, but in a thick, blinding curtain. The laughter died. We huddled together, trying to figure out which direction was which. Jen started to cry, her breath turning to a puff of vapor that was immediately swallowed by the storm. Kyle, the most outdoorsy of us, pulled out a compass. It spun wildly, a useless needle in a magnetic maelstrom. We were lost. The hours that followed were a waking nightmare. We walked in what we hoped was a straight line, but the snow piled up around us, our footprints vanishing as soon as we made them. Dave, who'd been complaining about his feet for a while, suddenly collapsed. His face was pale, his lips blue. He couldn't feel his toes. Frostbite. Panic set in. We couldn't carry him, and leaving him here was unthinkable. We built a makeshift shelter with what little we had, our backpacks and some broken branches. Jen and Sarah huddled with Dave, trying to keep him warm, while Mark and I went for help. We were a new pair, a new hope. The storm had a mind of its own. It howled, it screamed, it threw gusts of wind that nearly knocked us off our feet. I kept calling out Mark's name, my voice swallowed by the wind. I could see his silhouette just ahead, a dark shape against the swirling white. Then, a few minutes later, he was gone. I yelled. I screamed, my voice raw, but there was no response. The world was just snow and the sound of my own ragged breathing. I stumbled for what felt like an eternity. I was alone. The cold was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. I fell, my face hitting the snow, the shock of it a temporary reprieve from the cold. I lay there for a while, just breathing, my mind a blank state. Then I heard something, a sound that wasn't the wind. A high, thin cry, like a child's wail. I pushed myself up, my muscles screaming in protest. I saw it, a faint light, bobbing in the distance. A rescue team? I stumbled towards it, a desperate surge of adrenaline coursing through me. I called out, my voice a croak. The light didn't respond. It just bobbed, a little flicker of hope in this vast darkness. I followed it. It led me to a small secluded clearing. The light vanished. In its place, I saw something. Not the rest of my friends, but the ghosts of them. They were just there, standing in the clearing, their faces pale, their eyes vacant. They were not wearing the clothes that they had on, but old, faded hiking gear from a different era. The wailing sound returned, a chorus of faint cries. They looked at me, not with recognition, but with a hollow, vacant stare. The same kind of stare that you see in old photos of people who have been through unimaginable horrors. Then, the world went black. I woke up at a hospital bed a week later. They told me I was found a mile off a major road, hypothermia setting in. My friends, they found the makeshift shelter. Dave had passed away. And the other three, Jen, Kyle, and Sarah, were barely clinging to life. They were all brought to the hospital, but none of them ever really recovered. They were physically okay, but their minds, they were gone. They would just stare into the distance, murmuring about the light. Then Mark. They never found Mark. Not a trace. The ranger said that he must have fallen into a crevice. But I knew he was with them, with those other people in the clearing. They were the vanishing point, the place where lost souls go when the mounds decide to keep them. The mounds don't always kill you. Sometimes they just take you.